Good morning. Today I will be going through my single player level. Basically just like a designer's commentary, if you will. Just to explain my ideas and why I chose to create the level I did. The first part of my level, which is basically a dark and dreary forest, was kind of inspired by, well, wintertime in Norway, considering how it's always dark and gloomy and a lot of sounds. It's just pretty depressing. And considering I live in front of a forest, this fit pretty well. UDK itself does not have a lot of good meshes for creating trees and plants and stuff, so I had to be creative with lighting and fog to make it look relatively unique in the first area. I really wanted to capture the sense of scale with this level. When you just enter the temple, or you see the temple for the first time, you're going to notice the huge statue, and I really wanted the statue to kind of look ominous upon you. Instead of just being there, I wanted it to really feel like it was looking at you no matter where you stood. Same with the green vortex in the sky, which is basically just to kind of explain to you that there's evil inside, and you will meet it at some point. The waterfall sounds are basically just ambience, and doesn't add anything gameplay wise. You can't really jump in or swim in it. This is actually one of the places in the game where I'm the most proud of, because it was really the first thing I ever did in Kismet. And I kind of wanted to do this as an example of the temple kind of just waking up. And I think it's a pretty cool effect. At the same now that you can't really exit the temple, you're kind of stuck in here and you're forced to move on. I also wanted to give you a glimpse of the end. As you can see, that's the dark, evil, eerie skull that's kind of just staring at you at the end of the hallway, and it seems like you could just run straight through it and bypass everything, but I wanted to make sure you got to see the whole level before you got there, so now you're stuck. The second room, the pretty room. This room was intended mainly to be kind of a soothing area before you kind of started the puzzles, or the different things that come later. And I decided to put some flowers with pretty lights on them just to make it seem a bit more lifelike. And again, you gotta be creative when you're using UDK with the standard assets, because there are very few assets that were actually useful for what I needed them to be. So I had to use lighting carefully to make it look like claws, literally, and not like the statues they're supposed to be. One thing that was important to me was to create a living kind of... I wanted to make it look like you were in a different place, in a different world. I didn't want to make it feel like you were in a game. I tried really hard to make it look as realistic as I could. And when it comes to this room, I think I did pretty well. It's basically a hub area before you go into the next puzzle, which is through this portal. This is the beginning of what I call the labyrinth puzzle, or the maze puzzle. It's basically the part of the game that took the most part to mesh, mainly because of the fact that the floor is all meshes and the walls are all hand-placed meshes and resized not to look like it's just copy and paste all over. And I wanted to see if people could be taught how to observe their environments in order to complete levels. So I decided to give people two different ways to actually complete this puzzle. First one is relatively obvious. It's the sound of wind always coming from your right, which kind of makes you believe that you should go close to it to get to the end. But I didn't want to make it too easy, so I forced the player to move somewhat to the left before being able to go right again. That's the most obvious way to finish level. This second way, which is not as obvious but pretty efficient as well, if you notice it, is the plants. I decided to create vines that will always guide you towards the end. If you have an observant eye, you'll always see them. So the vines were created to lead you towards the end. Again, I had to be clever with the lighting to make it look a lot prettier than standard UDK meshes actually look. So I modified the lighting, just the way, the color of the light, and to make it look like it's actual flames, which made the walls around look a lot sharper. The wind and the plants are very obvious towards the end, and it just picks up and you know you're getting close. When you then are able to finish the puzzle, you'll get to another portal which will lead you to the last puzzle of the game. As you can see, this is the other side of the wall that kind of just blocked you, and you can still see that huge ominous skull just staring you down in the distance, and it kind of looks like it's a straight walk to the skull, but I wanted to create some kind of a wow moment, you could say, where you enter the room and you'll just stop and you'll just go, wow, what just happened? So I decided to make the floor drop. By making the floor drop, it kind of gives way to the huge pit, kind of the abyss beneath the floor, as well as smoke rising up. And the final puzzle is fairly straightforward. It's basically just a jumping puzzle, moving from platform to platform, teaching you how to double jump. My original concept of this puzzle was far too difficult and nobody could actually finish it, so I had to mess a bit with Matinee to make the animations of the platforms move, well, not be as far away from each other when everything dropped. Also had to change the thickness of the meshes just to make them look like real rocks and not wafers. And then you're at the end. The final part of the game is after you enter the portal, and this is the final part. You start off in a long, kind of airy hallway with light piercing through the cracks in the walls on your left side. I wanted to create this as a kind of soothing end to the game. And again, UDK creates fairly pretty meshes, but you have to be careful on how you place them, because without the right lighting they're just going to look really cartoony and fake. So light placement is incredibly important to make things look real. I also wanted to give the wind sound a second run, I guess, because you already knew that going towards the wind will lead you towards the exit in the labyrinth puzzle, so I wanted to create some wind sound here leading you towards the end. Now, this is actually one of my favorite parts of the game. You walk up these stairs towards this huge green god ray emitting monolith, and it's kind of supposed to represent the exit from the temple. You've survived, you've managed to play your way through. And I wanted to use green because green is a fairly positive color, and everybody knows that green usually means go. And that's basically it. When you touch the monolith, the game will just end. And overall, I'm fairly happy with the way it looked after I was done. I think I've done a fairly decent job at creating an interesting world with fairly old assets and made everything look pretty. And other than that, thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed it.